Hello, it's Lee. Well, this video is gonna be to fulfill a request that somebody had made. So I wanted to talk about exactly what you see here. Angels, gods, fallen gods, what does it mean? What do we understand of it? My own impression about it, and let us begin. First of all, we have to try to remember the two very distinct things. You have the motive being, and then you have things. So before there is anything manifested externally outside, seeable, visible, if you will, tangible, palpable in some kind of way, before it can manifest as something, that thing is based, has its root, and is permeated with the mode of being. So something is going to be, if we're going to talk about an angelic being, for example, then we're going to think about an enlightened entity, right, for example. Well, there can be different kinds of angels, won't get into that. But you're thinking of a matured and grown heart. You're thinking of a wise, enlightened mind, for example. And then if we're talking about a fallen angel, we'll think about, or a negative entity, a demonic entity, then we're thinking about the negative qualities. We're thinking about fear, darkness, some kind of jealousy, whatever, aggression and violence, discord, disharmony inside, something like that. And a mind that's closed to something, maybe. So you have different poles. This is how the universe works, polarities. But really what we call the source, or the God, people like to use that word, but oftentimes I think we put the word on to depict something that's not actually the God of gods, but a God with a personality, different levels of insight, for example. So I'm going to be mostly making the video from sort of a mixture of a Buddhist and also esoteric Christian background. These are my main backgrounds of learning. But in many cases, if it is indeed true, if something is true, it doesn't belong to this or that, doesn't belong to Christianity, doesn't belong to Buddhism, doesn't belong. It just, if it's an isness and it's true, then it's true. It doesn't even have to have a name. That's even better. Even in Star Wars they call it the Force. Well, let's look at it. The center, and there's no one specific point that is a center. The center of the universe is grandiose, and we can scarcely even think about how big it is, how amazing and all that. The pros and the cons of it, it's baffling. If we try to think about it a bit, maybe we'll have an understanding. But it takes a long time to really appreciate it, because when we're here as souls growing in the soil of the earth, so to speak, we still tend to be very egocentric. We think, oh, the universe started from this particular point, we're special, the earth is special, our own sun is special and unique. But really it's not. Everything could be special. There is no, and let's try to remember that. I really encourage anybody to really think about that. Don't talk about Big Bang Theory and all these kind of things. Those things stem from ignorance, those ideas. But really, any particular area in the whole massive multi-cosmos can be a specific center. You and I can consider ourselves one such center. There is a consciousness that is permeating everything everywhere, and we are all unique experiencers of it. So there's no one particular point, but if you want to call something the source or the God of gods, for a manner of speaking, then we're going to look at something like this. We're talking about something that is completely balanced, that which everything is contained inside. Not only good without having any understanding of the dark side, because if you're purely good, or you're only holy, you'll have no tolerance for darkness at all. If you're only dark, you're going to remain lost forever. But the real true enlightenment, the real true balance, the real true Buddha mind or Christ consciousness is understanding of all things, not denial, neglect, because people think about a judgmental, angry God or an angel that kills demons all the time, but that would mean that they don't have any understanding of the darkness, and they're in denial. Because think about that, if someone goes on the attack, especially particularly Christians and Muslims, the majority of them maybe are not aggressive, but you have the zealous preacher types that we're all familiar with, and I used to be a little bit staunch myself. But thinking about someone that has zero tolerance for any darkness because they're in denial that those things could take root within themselves. They think about an eradication of all things. But the universe, if it was only perfectly positive and good, it would be stagnant, it would be boring, there would not be a great purpose to it. So there is the necessary counter kingdom. But true enlightenment is the understanding of all of these things and coming to the balance. This is what we call the Buddha mind. So on a positive side, yes, if you're reading it, but we have happiness, selflessness, love, peace, kindness, harmony, generosity, trust. I just wrote some of them down. Some of them are interrelatable, and you can add more, take away, whatever. And as for negative, we think of negative qualities in the mode of being. I'm not talking about things. We're talking about the mode of being, obviously. We're talking about sadness, selfishness, fear, anger, violence, chaos, distrust, etc., so on and so forth. Add and take away as you will. So positive charged and negative charged modes of being, not things. We're not talking about planets and gods yet. So the source of sources, if you want to call it that, or the great mind of the God, or whatever word we want to use that can be applicable or could be comfortable for us to understand, is the balance of all things. When Jesus said, "In me you have nothing," talking about the dark side, not meaning only good and having zero tolerance, but rather extreme tolerance for all these things for having understood it. So, for example, when the Buddha found enlightenment, never mind Christ and Buddha, these are just examples I'm using as well-known figures, but we are the same. We are destined to become the Christ mind, the Buddha mind, for example. It's our innate potential, and it is actually our innate eventual destiny. So let's really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Our own perfection is what we seek. It takes a long time to get it. Our own happiness is what we're seeking. It takes a long time to get it because we're wrestling with all these things. And we try to be, I'm not saying be both and it doesn't matter. So some people think, oh, I heard there's a hidden dharma. Guess what? Really, it doesn't matter what you do. Shh. Well, that's just people that are still wrestling with the idea of, I technically can do this. I can be selfish. I can do that. I can do that. How wonderful. There's no God to punish me or something like that. But really, they're still wrestling with the idea, I can do that. Once you get over the idea that you can or you can, or not about cannot, but you can, and then you start to get, when your heart and your mind start to mature, and then you start to question yourself, what should I or should I not do, due to the very default nature of the universe and its natural karmic effects. If I'm selfish, then naturally it'll come back to bite me, for example. If I'm happy and kind to people, that will come back to me karmically. So when people get over the idea of can or cannot, or there's a God going to punish me if I don't be good, but we should be coming to the understanding that goodness reaps its own reward and its own fruit, and negativity and the darkness reaps its own reward and its own fruit. So it's not about be good or else God's going to put you in hell, but rather if you're not good and you keep being selfish and negative, then those negative fruits are going to keep coming back to us. And that's how it is. People talk about, oh, well, here's a savior, that's a savior, get me out of here. But really the ultimate truth is you are the savior of yourself. I am the savior of myself. But that which gets us out is the good qualities coming towards balance by understanding these things and making peace with all the negative things in their very center of their own heart. That was a great saying from the Buddhists. Making peace with these things in their own nature, in their own heart, and not having denial and pushing them away. Oh, the devil, I'll kill you, I'll burn you at the stake, you witch, or something. All these, right? These are denials which reap violence. People writing YouTube comments, you didn't believe in Christ or Allah or whatever, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell. This is negative. This is negativity, fear, anger, aggression, violence. Fear, anger, aggression, the dark side this is. Remember Yoda was talking about that in the Star Wars? It was the same thing. All of these things, because they're not balanced, they're not put at peace. When we put these negative things, when we confront them within ourselves with total peace, in ourselves, in the mode of being, in ourselves in total peace, when we master ourselves, then we can help others to do it. Did not Jesus even say himself, why are you talking about here? I'll pull that splinter out of your eye, my brother. And then you have a log in your own eye, and you can't even see. Lots of people do that. They condemn, they condemn, they condemn, they condemn. But they're still full of fear, anger, violence, distrust, all sorts of things. People talk about when they deal with the devil, and the demonic is very real. That's what we're going to talk about. These are fallen entities who've fallen. All of us, actually. All of us who are here are not balanced. We're all fallen out. We're still trying to find the harmony of this. And finding the harmony, putting the peace within all the negativity, and understanding why others are in these modes. When we understand why others are in these modes, because we have made peace with it, and we understand it in our own self, then we deal with these in a peaceful nature, in a productive nature, not condemnation and violence. You didn't bow down to God, I'll cut your head off, or Jesus is going to put you in hell. No, Jesus was not about that. The churches became like that because they were full of, I should have wrote pride and other things, but yeah, you understand. Okay, these are from the modes of ignorance, because the being is not balanced. So when we come out of the source of the Godhead, whatever you want to call it, when we fall from grace, come out of the Buddha mind to experience, okay? Because we're in balance, and if something is balanced, does it stay balanced forever, or does it wish to explore all sorts of things, to redo it and reappreciate it? Because if we're looking at the word eternity, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, then maybe we want to be balanced, maybe we'll want to experience all sorts of things, maybe we'll want to incarnate and do it all again. Okay, these are all deep esoteric teachings. This is the true Dharma. Not do what you want, doesn't matter. Well, yeah, in one way of speaking, but if you want to be locked into this, careful, because you might be in for a long haul of bad effects. They're just a suggestion. So, when consciousness decides to become an individual and falls out of balance, then it becomes addicted to wanting to experience things, and can get stuck in all sorts of things, and then eventually want to return to all sorts of things. So it's kind of like a Yin Yang effect. The Yin Yang is such an important sacred symbol, more than a lot of people even realize. It's actually, as far as a visual representation of the universe, the Yin Yang, I think, is the best one out there. But whatever, it doesn't have to be, it's Chinese, it's the Tao, it's this, that. It doesn't have to have a name. It's a brilliant representation of the truth of the universe. So, fallen angel, if we're talking about that, is an entity that existed in grace, because there's, I'll have to erase this picture in a minute to draw a new one, but there's actually many layers of heavens, right? Even the Bible will talk about the seventh heaven or the ninth heaven, something like that. Many stages out of the people. Hey, 4D, 5D is coming up. People are anxious to graduate. And the world of the angels and the world of the extraterrestrials with their beautiful ships and their greater freedoms, these are next stages up from what we're experiencing here. Sure they are. But there are higher levels than that, and you don't have to necessarily go to that. If we concentrate on full enlightenment, we can surpass even those 4D, 5D, and go right back to the source, which is what Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, did. He said, I'm going to skip the stages and go back to the source of all things, the original clean, untouched mind, which is also by default the original untouched heart, the balance of harmony of everything. So 4D, 5D, yeah, but you can even you can pierce through those, you can curtail and even go higher than that. Not everything is so set in stone. We're so egocentric and so convinced, and these books and these doctrines and these so-called educations have dumbed us down to think it's exactly like that and exactly like that. We've compartmentalized and categorized everything, but it doesn't have to be like that exactly. When we understand the modes of being, really when we do, and we're trying, none of us is perfect, and I'm far from it. But when I'm trying to understand these things, when I'm trying to deal with my own negativity, I'm trying to not deny it, I'm trying to make peace with it, and I recommend anyone to do the same thing. If an angel is encountered, for example, because we're talking about angelic encounters and demonic encounters, then we're talking about real experiences with other forms of consciousness, level entities, individual entities, and their own individual level of consciousness. Are they attached to this and they're vibrating with the good stuff, or are they vibrating with the bad stuff? But then when we encounter them, excuse me, just like encountering other people, to what levels do they have these? So it's not about humans are there, angels are there, gods are there, this and that. Angels, gods, demons, whomever, all have different levels of this. And the closer one is to Godhead or Source or whatever you want to call it, the more balanced they are by natural default. So the higher up the hierarchy, so to speak, then the more balance. Not necessarily only love and light, because only love and light would mean if any of these are encountered, shock, denial, aggression towards these things, which brings you back to fear, anger, violence kind of thing. So even the wars in heaven of angels fighting demons and all this kind of stuff, it's still in a chaotic kind of way. But it has to be, because in order for there to be a balance, there has to be everything. There has to be night and day, dark and light. There has to be all of the opposite polarities in order for the balance to be appreciated and found. So at any given moment, a human being, an angel, a fallen angel, a god, is in, like I keep saying, in one of these levels, and however close to this, the more enlightenment that entity would have. Okay, so what I want to do here is quickly show something. Don't mind my little apparatus here. Sometimes I like to do a PowerPoint presentation, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes I have difficulties with the software. I don't have an easy way of going right to PowerPoint to video because I don't have the 2007. That's a funny thing. Talk about a little thing on the side as we're doing the video, such as it is. But sometimes this is more in a way more personal, perhaps, if you don't mind the style of it. Okay. So people talk about, let's say here is high heaven, but what makes it a high heaven? Is it because those who are there have a certain level of balance, that they have a certain enlightenment, that they have a certain level of understanding, they have a certain level of mode of being? Okay, various stages, and then let's say, yeah, there's a lot more before the high, okay, there'd be a lot more, many more stages, and then we're going to do like a planet such as Earth, and then that which is below. So it doesn't exactly necessarily look like that, but for visual representation, please allow it to look like that for a minute. So we find ourselves incarnate on a planet like this, not because we are created from dust and dust we are. This is a lie. This is church and religious doctrines from wherever. Let's not to pick on a particular one, but I've looked at many all over the world. Even I've read the Popol Vuh from the Mayans and different religions, different things. They all have the same things to say, and then when they got watered down and weakened, then they start to say some pretty false things, like you are your body, you only have one life, you're going to hell forever if you didn't bow down to this, something. Okay, but these are based upon fear and denial on the level of ignorance. Anyone could have made the mistake. None of us are perfect. But what we're talking about is consciousness, eternal, living soul entity, mind and emotion, eternal consciousness soul entity, coming in and out of the perfection of the balance, finding itself on a planet like this. I have a body, I have a name, I have a face, I have a personality. Me, you, everybody we can think of. That's here. This is just for the Earth. So you have different levels. Okay, so you have the Earth humans. Okay, standing, walking, talking. Okay, north, south, east, west, and all in between and everywhere. And then you have all other entities, non-incarnate, that do incarnate here for various purposes, for their own soul growth, in a body, out of a body. Okay, it's not really that much of a big difference actually. Then you have, let's say, levels of consciousness that are higher. So you have angelic forces for the light, for the good, for trying to assist people to mature out of the lower levels of nature from the mode of being, the anger, the fear, the aggression, and all that stuff. And then you'd have the counter kingdom, the negative entities, whose job it is to corrupt, to keep things down. So you have a tug of war between maturity and enlightenment and selfishness and darkness. And the darker one is, then the more selfish that they will be by default nature, because of the fear that they have and the denial and the jealousy and the competitive nature. So when a dark entity incarnates and becomes a person on a planet, they are indeed a fallen angel in the extreme, because now you've gone from being a dark negative entity, but now you're incarnate in the mud, and now you're really competing and fighting with everybody, but even in greater ignorance than a negative entity out of the body. Now the negative entity out of the body, whether it be a fallen angel or if you want to call it that, or a soul out of a lot of balance, full of fear and pride and denial and all sorts of things, then because a negative entity feels ultimately has a self-loathing, ultimately has a competitive pride due to the fear, due to the jealousy. Pardon a little phone call in the background. So when you have entities like this, then they'll cause competition, destruction, wars. All the negative qualities from the mode of being are manifesting themselves into the physical, which is why we have on this earth, this country doesn't trust that country, there's a war here. You have super rich people that prey on the poor and who they deem the weak. You have all these nasty, terrible things. But then all the good, all the more enlightened beings, the more mature beings, those who are latching on to love and peace and harmony, are trying to make that on the planet. Now eventually, even on a planet like this, the darkness will be, if you want to call it, usurped or eradicated and gone. But it's not necessarily about some god coming, because then you have a god like Jehovah, or however you want to pronounce it, Yahweh. Then you have another god that's working for another purpose, but also for enlightenment. So you could have a Luciferian god or something like that. So you have different energies and entities, and you have the sun and the moon. So you have powers, principalities, entities, and energies that are keeping this to be a school, a jail, a hospital. All these entities keeping it going, keeping it in its place, so that soul entities can incarnate and learn and find the balance. An Earth planet, a planet like this, is made to quarantine scatterbrained souls, for example, out of balance souls, growing souls, youthful souls, small levels of consciousness slowly expanding, and eventually take on enlightenment. If a soul entity wants to remain a fallen and not become an angel, so to speak, but remain a fallen, then when they go to hell, it means not a place that they're tortured eternally, because that's a terrible thing to say, tortured eternally. And as Christians and certain Christians, not esoteric ones, and certain Muslims and certain persons falsely believe that they have one life, that's it, resurrected or damned forever. Think about it, being damned forever in a lake of fire for one life. A little harsh. So rather, hell means a return and a keeping with, a latching, a deeper marriage with all the negative things, and then having to suffer all the negative karmic effects of those selfishness, violence, and all these things. So people that, and then this is karma. So then when we see on the planet war, starvation, suffering, all sorts of nasty things happening, it's not just some random accident. The powers, the principalities, the universe's karmic effects are making sure that those who did something receive something, so that not to be punished forever eternally, but so that you would no longer repeat that thing. For example, someone's a violent bully, beating everybody up or something like that, and then they themselves receive it, well then they know what it's like. If someone puts someone into slavery or something like that and did something really bad, or really took advantage of a situation, eventually some incarnations later they receive the exact same treatment, well then they're not very likely to repeat that. So as the Hindus or as the Buddhists like to remind us, talking about, don't be so quick to have an emotional reaction to the things we see around as possible. Yeah, we want justice and things like that, but I'm saying try to understand the reason why. What is that individual's level of mode of being, and why do they have to receive that? What's the reason behind it? Because either we say it's a random accident, or it's not. And when we start to understand that it's not, it doesn't mean we agree with it or we like it. Oh well, that person's died in a war as a child. Big deal, that's their karma. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's still terrible. It can bring a tear to the eye. Sure, it can break your heart many times. But I'm saying, sad as it is, bad as it is there a reason that that has manifested? Just ask yourself that. Is there a reason that it has manifested? So, fallen angel, as we were talking about earlier, can be, well, basically any one of us in a manner of speaking, simply to say, fallen from grace, came out of balance to experience a myriad of things. But the good news is, as the Christ would say, or as the Buddha would say, that level of consciousness, that level of mode of being is accessible to any one of us. We can curtail so many things by the more we try and find the balance inside, get ourselves close to the love, the peace, the harmony, but not deny, but rather understand the reason why someone would be a certain way. Then we can have, as Christ said as he came to talk about forgiveness, not remaining and condemning and accusing, because it's the devil in the Christian, Judeo-Christian Bible, to talk about the devil is the accuser. You did that, you're not this, you're not good. The devil accuses, but the light forgives. But it's unfortunate that happened to you. Now you had your karma or whatever, but come out of that. Come out of that loathing, that sadness, that fear, that hatred, that violence. Come out of it. Come up. Come to the light. Bring yourself open. Open here, open here. And that is a real Christ mind. And that is a real Buddha mind. That is a real perfection. That's a balance. Because everything else could be considered a fallen nature. Until we are perfect, if you want to call it that, we are imperfect. It's very simple. It's just a child can understand it. So, fallen angels, gods, but the God of gods, I'm not talking about Yahweh, Lucifer, something like that. I'm talking about the God of gods. We are always intricately, innately a part of. As the Hindus like to say, part and parcel. A drop of water out of the ocean, but not different. When we enter the ocean, we don't dry up, as it said. I just want to read this. This is from a Tibetan Buddhist ritual called A Beautiful Ornament. I've seen it on a video and I wrote it down, and I'd like to repeat it for you. Here we go. So the aim of the practice of finding enlightenment is to pacify, not deny, pacify the disturbances of the mind which manifest as war, epidemics, diseases, insanity, drought, injustice, and accidental death. Its medium of transmission is the compassion of the enlightened mind and heart, and its sacred method is to utterly satisfy the forces of disturbance in the heart of their own nature. We go right into what is that fear, what is that violence, what is that root, and understand it, nurture it, heal it, and find enlightenment. Not punish. There can be karma, there can be things, but it's not hell forever. It's to nurture, to help that soul entity get out of hell. Even a dark demon can eventually become an enlightened angel. That is very true. Real esotericists know this. Not Christians, Muslims who are of the ignorant sort, who deny. And I don't mean to always pick on them, but there's a lot of them in the planet, and a lot of them think they are the body, this and that. But I'm not against anyone. I used to be very much a Christian myself, in a very staunch way. One of my best friends right now to this day grew up very much a Muslim. His dad actually taught Islam, but now he's kind of gone more into a wider variety of things. But I'm not really making fun of anyone. I'm just saying the real truth of truths is even a dark entity can become light, and even a light entity can fall. Fallen angel or even a risen angel. So this is a great truth for us to understand. So, yeah, as we were saying, to satisfy the forces of disturbance in the heart of their own true nature. And the effectiveness of it depends on someone's own individual effort to apply to find enlightenment. And that's really what it is. The various modes of being, trying to find the balance, trying to find satisfaction and the harmony, but lasting satisfaction can never be forever rich and powerful and versus everybody. Not eternal, and will never last. For one example. So, the modes of being and their imbalances manifest as all these things, physical things, gods, angels. Well, not even physical, but separate things with type, form, essences, manifesting, and then, last but not least, down into the mud, incarnate in a solid 3D reality, wrestling with the idea. But having a body is not necessarily to be seen as a punishment, dust and ashes. Having a body like this is a great opportunity to find enlightenment, because we have a little bit of the tabula rasa, we have a little bit of the amnesia when we incarnate. So there's a fresh chance to try, if we might, depending on our circumstances, to try and find that enlightenment, to try and find that balance, to attain what we're after. It's not to force anyone, you must find enlightenment or else. No. To understand why someone is following the path that they are, but then to recommend to them, if you're finding negativity and you're reaping negative effects, there's a way out. There's a way out of that. There's a way to become risen. That's my message for today. Think on that, meditate on it, if you will, if you want to. Lots of videos out there, a lot of things to read that talk about these things, but anyways, it is what it is. Even for whatever's out there, we're always talking about external things. Look inside. Ask yourself what's true, what's not true. Look at the mode of being of yourself. I do feel happiness. I can feel some sadness. I can feel some fear. I can feel some bravery. All these things that are there, everybody else has it, but to what level have they amplified that? This person's fear and aggression is really amplified. This person's love and peace and tolerance is really amplified. That's it. The mode of being is the same thing for everything. Angels, gods, fallen angels, consciousness and emotion exist wherever there is an entity. So that's it. When we understand ourselves, we understand other people. If we understand other people, we understand ourselves. It's that simple. So there you go. Love, peace, namaste. Catch you soon, and I wish you the best, and I wish you enlightenment. Take care.